Covering a total area of 482,443 square kilometers, Yukon has a population of 46,259 as of 2024. It is the westernmost of Canada's 3 territories, north of the 60th parallel. The name of Yukon was first used by John Bell, a trader for the Hudson's Bay Company. In 1846, Chief Trader John Bell of the HBC canoed down the Porcupine River to where it meets the Yukon River. There, he met natives of the Gwich'in, who told him that the name of the big river was the Gwich'in word Yukon, meaning the greatest river. The human history of the Yukon Territory goes back more than 13,000 years, coinciding with the dramatic glacial retreat. Yukon's geography is filled with mountain ranges, huge rivers, vast tundra, and an Arctic Ocean coast. It is a majestic environment featuring summers under the glow of a midnight sun and deep, cold winters illuminated by northern lights. Rising to an elevation of 5,959 meters, Mount Logan is the highest point in the Yukon Territory, as well as the entire Canada. The 3,185-kilometer Yukon River, one of the longest and most unspoiled rivers in North America, rises from Atkin Lake in northern British Columbia, Canada. It is a sprawling, complex river system that meanders across one of the last great wilderness areas in North America, flowing in a long arc to the northwest through Whitehorse and Dawson City, and then southwest across central Alaska, and ultimately empties into the Bering Sea. Known as the lifeline to the territory, the mighty Yukon River and its tributaries are central to Yukon's economy, culture, and recreation. There are 14 distinct indigenous groups across the Yukon. For thousands of years, Aboriginal people have used the Yukon River as a transportation corridor and a meeting place. First Nations people have traveled throughout the Yukon River drainage, harvesting its fish and hunting and trapping in the mountains and valleys. Shortly before crossing into Alaska, the Yukon River passes through Dawson, where it receives one of its smaller but highly famous tributaries, the Klondike. Gold was discovered by local miners in 1896 on one of the Klondike's feeder streams, Bonanza Creek. Seattle Post-Intelligencer carried headlines of a ton of gold on July 17, 1897. The title was, "Gold, Gold, Gold. 68 rich men on the steamer Portland. Stacks of yellow metal. Steamer carries $700,000. Immediately, the Klondike Gold Strike news spread like wildfires in Seattle, San Francisco, and elsewhere, setting off a stampede of prospectors. On July 26, 1897, the steamer Queen docked at Moore's Wharf in Skagway, southeast Alaska, with the first boatload of gold prospectors. Soon, thousands of gold seekers throughout North America and from around the world embarked on their 500-mile journey to the gold fields in Canada. In 1898 alone, more than 7,000 boats traveled to the Klondike area. During the 3 years from 1896 to 1899, the Klondike Gold Rush saw a migration by an estimated 100,000 prospectors to the Klondike region. To accommodate an influx of prospectors, boom towns sprang up along the routes. At their terminus, Dawson City was founded at the confluence of the Klondike and Yukon rivers. From a population of merely 500 in 1896, Dawson grew to some 30,000 people by the summer of 1898. The Klondike Gold Rush did not last long. By 1899, the stream of gold seekers had diminished. Some gold prospectors became rich, but the majority went in vain. Gold mining production in the Klondike peaked in 1903 after heavier equipment was brought in. Since then, the Klondike has been mined on and off. The gold prospector's journey began with the difficult task of climbing steep mountains, following either the Chilkoot or the White Pass trails, and onward across the US-Canada border to Bennett Lake or one of its neighboring lakes, where they built barges and floated down the Yukon River to the Klondike. The gold rush created the need for reliable transportation. In May 1898, a group of investors and engineers began the construction of a railway starting in Skagway, southeast Alaska. By July 1900, the railway was completed, connecting Whitehorse to the southeastern coast of Alaska via the 190-kilometer White Pass and Yukon route. Although the gold rush was nearly over, a new transportation system developed, with freight and passengers traveling by rail to Whitehorse and then farther inland by means of stern-wheel riverboats. In 1900, the White Pass and Yukon Route Company established a river division, namely the British Yukon Navigation Company, BYN. Since then, BYN ran stern-wheelers on the Yukon River for more than 50 years. At 64 meters from bow to stern, SS Klondike II was the largest stern-wheeler in active service on the Yukon River from 1937 to 1955. However, highways replaced rivers as Yukon's transportation corridors. With the construction of a number of roads connecting Whitehorse, Dawson City, and other communities, in 1955, BYN pulled SS Klondike II, the last of the stern-wheelers, out of service. Sitting in dry dock near the Whitehorse shipyard for 10 years, on June 10, 1966, SS Klondike II was moved over dry land to its current location in the Rotary Peace Park near the Whitehorse waterfront. Today, the Klondike is a National Historic Site that is maintained by Parks Canada. In 1942, amid fears of an invasion in Alaska after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the U.S. military, a force of almost 16,000 soldiers and civilians, undertook a monumental task to construct an overland supply line to Alaska in less than 9 months. The Alaska Highway was 2,237 kilometers in total, from Dawson Creek in British Columbia through mountains, dense forests, swamps, and rivers in Yukon, all the way to the Richardson Highway in Alaska. Construction of the Alaska Highway, the road built between Mayo and Whitehorse in 1950, and the Klondike Highway, completed in 1955, that connected Dawson and Whitehorse, signaled the end of the riverboat era. Whitehorse got its name from the rapids of the Yukon River, where the frothing water resembled the manes of white horses. Because of its prime location, the White Pass and Yukon Route Company opened a shipyard on the waterfront built docks and warehouses, turning Whitehorse into a transportation hub to serve the transport of supplies and passengers in all directions. On April 1, 1953, Whitehorse was designated the capital of the Yukon Territory when the seat was moved from Dawson City. While in Whitehorse, make sure you spend a few hours visiting the McBride Museum to learn about the rich culture and traditions of Yukon's First Nations. Also, go to the top of 2 Mile Hill to admire the Iron Horse sculpture. Daphne Mennel, a local resident, led the project of creating the Whitehorse horse to reflect Yukoners' aspirations for an icon linked to the capital city. Weighing over 2 tons and rearing up over 3 meters, more than 200 Yukoners from around the territory donated pieces of scrap metal for the sculpture. Many of the striking landforms in Yukon are situated in its southwestern corner in the Kluane National Park and Reserve. This World Heritage Site offers excellent opportunities for wilderness excursions. Like nature walks, wherever you go, you are in the middle of a scenic tour. Hike trails in the Kluane National Park and listen to the sound of rushing water from the creek nearby. Visitors to the Yukon used to see spectacular views from the deck of a steamboat. Today, driving along iconic highways such as the Alaska Highway, the Dempster Highway, is truly magnificent because you see breathtaking vistas in a wide open landscape. It's like sitting in an IMAX theater, watching stunning natural beauty over and over again for hours. The Yukon is one of the last pristine wilderness areas left on Earth, with a rich cultural heritage, fascinating gold rush history, breathtaking scenery in every direction, trails to hike and rivers to paddle. This is a place every traveler will love. Oh, don't forget the glorious midnight sun and magical northern lights. Northern Canada and the Yukon in particular are fast becoming hot destinations for travelers from around the world. To end this episode, I'd like to recommend the famous poem The Call of the Wild by Robert William Service. Known as the Barb of the Yukon or the Poet of the North, he asks the reader a series of questions. Have you camped upon the foothills, galloped over the ranges, broken trail on snowshoes, and roamed the arid sunlands through and through? To appreciate the great white silence, Robert Service asked the reader to listen to the wild because the wild is calling you. He ends the poem with the following plea: let us probe the silent places. Let us seek what luck betide us. Let us journey to a lonely land I know. There's a whisper on the night wind. There's a star agleam to guide us. And the wild is calling, calling. Let us go. Thank you for watching and listening. Please subscribe to this channel, Words of Woods.